Very good morning, everyone. This is Wael Ibrahim, the co-founder and representative of the Aware Academy. And I wanted to just confirm before we get started, if you can hear me and see me clearly. Can you just confirm in the chatting box if you can hear me and see me clearly, please? Beautiful, beautiful. I hope we can see this interaction throughout the day. This is going to be a long day. This is the first ever online webinar organized by the Aware Academy. And we will talk a little bit about Aware Academy later on, but I wanted to jump into the chunk of today's program. First of all, I wanted to apologize about the confusion regarding the timing. Ever since we have announced about the program, it was scheduled for 10 a.m. Perth time, and Perth and Philippines, Hong Kong, Malaysia, who else? In this region, China and all that, that time zone was scheduled accordingly. However, when we reach over 700 participants, we didn't have the platform to accommodate that number, so we have to search for Zoom, business license, and so on until we got one. And that made the confusion, because when we scheduled the meeting, it was scheduled for 9 a.m. We wanted to come an hour earlier just to make sure that technologies wouldn't fail us. So some people thought that the event itself will start at 9 a.m. So apologize, and thank you so much for coming an hour earlier. This is really will always be appreciated. Secondly, I wanted to thank everyone, speakers and participants. And I just wanted to bring to your attention something very important, and that is this event has been drawn the attention of people from over 50 countries. And this is something I have never seen in my career since I have started talking and addressing the harmful impacts of pornography. 52 countries. Registration came from over 50 countries, in fact 52 countries, and I stopped counting at 52. I couldn't go through each email to see where these people came from, so I stopped at number 52. And don't ask me why I stopped. It was too boring process to go through the emails, plus the time ran out. I ran out of time. Honestly, this morning I was going and talking to my colleague Liz Walker, and I was telling her we have 30 countries. And then 10 minutes later, I told her we've reached 40 countries. And then just before logging in, it say we hit 50 countries. So I'm so grateful to everyone who had registered. And as we can imagine, from 50 plus countries, we can see that some people would not be able to join us live because of time differences. So yes, I know Mexico. I'm going to read to you guys before we get started with the first speaker. I'm going to read to you every country until the 52, and I hope to do that super quickly, but I wanted to do that to acknowledge the effort of people from across the globe who really wanted to get the knowledge, the education around how to raise intelligent children who will not fall into the trap of porn that could ruin their lives on so many different levels. So thank you once again. So who are the which countries have registered? Let me do that super quickly. All right, we got Egypt, and there is no order intended whatsoever. Egypt, and then we have a country that I struggled to pronounce it, and I went online a couple of times to actually know how to pronounce it, and I hope I can do justice to the pronunciation. It is called Czechia. I hope that is absolutely correct. So Czechia, I don't know if that's correct. We have people from Australia, of course. We have Pakistan, South Africa, Sudan, Bangladesh, Indonesia, Saudi Arabia, Nigeria, Malaysia, Sri Lanka, Mexico came. Lebanon, I can see people already jumping on the chat to say Lebanon. We have Brunei, Kuwait, the UK, Qatar, the UAE, Dubai, Sharjah, and so many cities, by the way, from each countries, I can see many cities. And my intention was to read the cities, but it became too much. We have people from Morocco, Turkey, Mauritius, Guinea, Canada. We have so many people from Canada, Toronto, Vancouver, and so many. Niger, Benin, Austria, Ghana, Norway, Israel, Maldives, Lebanon, Belgium, Ukraine, Palestine, Singapore, Sweden, France. Can you imagine? France, Nepal, Japan, Spain, Ireland, New Zealand, Italy. Woo, I could go forever. We have people, so many people from India, the US, Iraq, Hong Kong, Jordan, Myanmar, Oman, Amman, the Philippines. I can never thank you guys enough for showing up and for showing such a great interest in attending our event to learn how to protect our children from that monster called pornography. We have experts from, just like how we have so many people from different walks of life, different countries, different backgrounds, different faiths. People with no faith at all have registered, people with different upbringing from all walks of life. We also have speakers who came from different backgrounds, carrying so much experience. I have counted the years of each person in that sphere, and I found that we have over 60 years of experience combined in protective behavior and porn addiction education. So I hope and I pray that this event will be one of the resources that will be used by millions of people around the world to help protect and raise resilient and smart children who will not fall prey to pornography. Having said that, I wanted to just give you a quick, brief introduction about Aware Academy. So the Aware Academy started in Egypt as the Aware campaign about 4 or 5 years ago. That was the initiative started by Dr. Muhammad Abdul Jawad, the founder of the Aware campaign, and he was only focusing on the Middle East. Actually, he was focusing on Egypt only. From the confinement of his house, he just started posting on Facebook about the harmful impact of pornography. And such a small initiative grew massively in such a short span of time, attracting people from all over the Middle East. Up until now, we have, I think, over 3 million plus followers on Facebook alone. And we have covered all other social media. And that is only the Arabic effort of Dr. Muhammad Abdul Jawad and his teams all over the Middle East. And I have been in that research myself personally. My name is Wael Ibrahim, for those who didn't know me. And I have started that research about 12 years or 13 years ago, when a young man came to me confessing his addiction to pornography and wanted to actually commit suicide. And that brought me so many years back when I was in early, my life in the early 90s, where we used to also access pornography through tapes and magazines and whatnot. And then with the rise of the internet, we became also addicted somehow. And back in the days, if you, from my generation, you would recall, if you have seen pornography, you would recall that pornography back then was just static pictures on the internet. And you will keep on clicking on those pictures until it takes you to the payment page. And most of us came from that poor background. We wouldn't ever bother to pay for such rubbish. So we just close the page and find other pages that will give us static pictures. Even at that time, we used to become very, very consumed with these images. But today, pornography is absolutely something different. And I will leave that to the experts to elaborate later on. But as I remember those days and seeing that man who was at that time 18 years or 19 years of age, wanted to end up his life because he cannot focus on his studies, he cannot focus on his life, he became isolated, depressed, and at the end he wanted to commit suicide. So it hits me that, oh my God, that could have been me. That could be my children in the future. And then I started doing the research, and as a result, I became the representative. Later on, when I saw the effort of Aware in Egypt, I said, why should I reinvent the wheel? They already have an establishment, big followers. Let us join hands, and instead of creating another organization, why can't we just join that effort together and reach out to as many cities and countries around the world? So our vision is to see teams on ground, Aware teams on ground in every city in the world. That's our vision and dream. People on ground to raise awareness, education, and help those people who are suffering in silence as a result of their addiction to pornography. That's our vision, and this is what we hope to achieve from such communication with you guys. So if you wish to reach us out and get the necessary training so that you can become part of the Aware Academy team on ground in your city, please email us. All the emails and the details will be left as we progress throughout the day today. All right, this is Aware Academy. Now we are launching very soon a massive website in the Arabic section as well as in the English-speaking world, courses and training and certification programs, which we will talk about later during the day. Without too much talking, I am done with talking now. I want to leave the platform to my dear friend, the first speaker, but let me change first the screen. Just give me a second. I love it when technology works. I love it. Okay. All right, it's not coming up, so I have to end that sharing first. Okay. All right, I think the poster is not coming, but let me do it one more time. Okay, just one more time. We're still on time, and I promise you we will start on time and finish on time this time, okay? All right, it's the same poster pop up. So I will not show the poster for now, but for now, let me introduce my dear friend, our first speaker, Holly-ann Marting, the Managing Director of Safe4Kids, and with experience of over 30 years working with children and schools in the area of protective behavior and safety within the online world. Holly-ann is the author of several books, and I will let her introduce her books later on. And she's one of the first supporters of the Aware Academy. And whenever we ask her for support and help and assistance, she never say no, including today's presence. Holly-ann, the microphone is yours. Please show us how it's done.
Thanks, Wael. And yeah, I was fine up until you started to read out all of those countries. And from there, I've gone, oh my God, this is getting real. So I'm so proud to be a part of this. My name's Holly-ann Marting, and I'm the Managing Director of Safe4Kids. Safe4Kids is a West Australian organisation that is dedicated to producing resources and teaching abuse prevention education across, well, it was across Australia, but recently it's been a bit more global, which is fantastic. But because I get to stand in front of about 4,500 children a year, and I've been teaching abuse prevention education for over 35 years, but Safe4Kids started back in 2007, where I saw a huge need for resources. So I quit my job and started doing this. And probably for the first 4 years, I never had to speak to children about pornography. But by about 2010, 2011, it was becoming more and more evident that I needed to speak about abuse prevention education as well as include pornography in that, because I was hearing from the children. So what I did was I included, as part of the public and private lesson, I included talking about private pictures and private movies. Now, you're going to hear from experts today, and I'm sure they're going to put up lots of statistics and things like that. And from the statistics that I've read, you know, some people say that children are coming across porn by 11. In my experience, I think the average age of kids looking at porn is 8. But I say that we need to, I'm going to take these off. I believe that we need to start the conversation when children are 6. And the reason that I say that is, and when I say that, parents, of course, are horrified, and teachers, you know, don't want to talk about it. But I say it's by 6 because what happens is, when I'm teaching the children, when we're talking about public and private body parts, and it's really important that kids use the correct anatomical names for their body parts. So we start off with rooms and then things that you do with your body. And in there, I talk about private pictures and private movies. Now, I was in a small school where I had 32 7-year-olds. And what I do with the children is we talk about, you know, where might children see pictures or moves of people with no clothes on? And children can tell me on iPhones, on iPads, YouTube always comes up. And if we have time, I might show you a YouTube clip. I can work out how to do that. Because children are seeing this stuff from a very early age. And so I talk to them about, you know, what to do about it. And I'll show you how to do that in a moment. But when I finish the lesson, I'm standing in the doorway, letting the children go out to play. There are 32 7-year-olds in the room. All of a sudden, 8 of them stayed behind. And I've said, come on, off you go. I want a cup of tea. Off you go and play. They said, no, miss, we need to talk to you. Of the 32 children, unfortunately, 8 stayed behind and came up individually to say how they had seen porn on YouTube. Not one child had told a parent for fear of getting into trouble or having the device taken away. And I said, well, you know, what are you going to do? And so I gave them the language throughout the lesson, and each of the children fortunately went home and told parents, because that night I ran a parent workshop and I had parents coming up and saying, oh my goodness, I hadn't realized, and things like that. And one of the other interesting things is that when we're brainstorming about where children can see the pictures, they never say magazines or on calendars, because that's so last century. But children are always telling me that now they're seeing it at the grandparents' houses, because here in Australia, lots of families have Family Zone or Net Nanny or protection on the computers, but grandparents don't think to do that. So if you are a grandparent, just be aware that children, you know, they're pretty savvy. And I had a child actually even say that when we were doing another brainstorm, I said, where might you see them? And he said, on an aeroplane. And I didn't think anything of it. I said, oh yeah, okay. And then the very next week, I was sitting next to a man on a plane watching Game of Thrones. And I've looked down and gone, yep, that's what that young man was talking about. He's obviously sat next to somebody on a plane watching something inappropriate. You know, I know of people sitting next to people on buses and things like that. So it's really important that we give children language to be able to tell us and debrief this stuff. I am going to show you now some photos. So if you, these are photos of images that children have drawn. I took them outside of a grade 5 classroom on the footpath. So I'm going to hold them up in front of the camera. And so if you don't want to see them, because they are very graphic, but I'm showing them to you to just show how much porn is impacting children and how well they're watching it. So some of them are really quite naive. But then they get a lot more graphic. So please turn away if you don't want to see them. But these are done by 9 or 10-year-olds, 11 at the most. Now this one, is very graphic, and I believe a year 4 medical student couldn't draw as anatomically correct as this child. Now I'm showing you those because to be able to draw that that well, kids must be watching a great deal of pornography to see those sorts of things. So this is why we have to start talking to children from a very young age. And it's, you know, it's not about, with 6-year-olds, it's not about the, you know, later on you'll hear from the amazing Liz Walker about, I'm sure she'll talk about, you know, getting teenagers to understand that it's not, you know, how, oh, I forget the terminologies that she uses, but to make up your own mind sort of thing. With little kids, all we do is we talk about, you know, if you see pictures or movies, go and tell a grown-up. Actually, no, take that back. Go and show a grown-up. I used to say tell with children until recently I had an experience where somebody had tagged me into child exploitation material on Instagram. Somebody had obviously come across something heinous involving children and an adult. And what they did was on Instagram, they tagged at Safe4Kids, which is me, at FBI, at Centre for Missing and Exploited Children. And so I just got a message on Instagram. So I've opened it up and I could not believe my eyes of what I was seeing. Now, I teach children about this all the time. So, you know, I knew what to do. So what I did was I took a screenshot of the man's face, but not the children, a screenshot of his account, but I didn't take a screenshot of the person that tagged me in because I didn't know what it was about. And then when I went to do that, it had disappeared and I hadn't realized that that sort of thing could happen. But what happened was, you know, we tell kids don't look at it, turn away and things like that. But even I've gone back and had to look at it a second time because I've gone, that can't be right. That's, you know, and so I was so traumatized by what I saw. My office is in the bottom of my garden. So I go up into the house to tell my husband exactly what I saw. Now I think I'm pretty articulate. And so I've explained to him, you know, really in graphic detail, exactly what I've seen. And he's gone, oh yeah. And I've gone, no, you don't understand. It's not, oh yeah. And I'm crying my eyes out and I'm really traumatized. And I still get flashbacks about what I saw, and it was horrible. So I got online, I went on and at the time I didn't report it to Instagram because I'd read so much in social media that Facebook and Instagram were being because of the virus, they were undermanned and stuff like that. So we went straight to the Australian Federal Police's website and reported it there. And so if you come across images like that, this is what you need to do, and also teach children to show you, and then, and I'll show you exactly how I teach it to the kids in a moment. But they need to show you, and then you need to report if you see images of children, especially. A lot of when children are sexting and sending nude images and stuff like that, that needs to be reported. I had a mum just last week tell me how her daughter, 11 years of age, a 14-year-old boy, supposedly, was chatting to her and asked her for nude images and had sent a picture of himself and stuff. So I talked her through exactly how I'm going to teach you that you either go on to the East Safety Commission if you're in Western Australia, or the AFP, the Federal Police. And so I went on and reported it and said, I have pictures if you need them. And the beautiful thing was they did get back to me the very next day and said, look, Holly, thank you. They phoned me and said, look, thank you. Your report came through last night. We had somebody else in Australia email this morning that they'd seen exactly the same stuff. It was obviously an overseas, you know, video. We've reported it to the Centre for Missing and Exploited Children in the US, and so it was dealt with. But the problem is, I still get flashbacks. That was I'll just spontaneously, that picture will come into my head and I'll burst into tears. And my husband doesn't understand why I'm doing that. And kids can't unsee stuff either. So that's why I need them to, if they see images of naked people, I need them to bring it to you and show you, because I'm articulate. And if a child, they might come and say, oh, I saw pictures of people with no clothes on. And, you know, that is not what they saw. And we know, and you'll hear it throughout the day, people will be reiterating this, we know that 88% of pornography is violence against women. So one of the big things as part of protective education we need to teach is the concept of consent. And consent is so important, because when I'm working with 14-year-old young men in high school, they're my favourite group to work with, to be honest, because 14-year-old boys don't have a filter. They just tell you stuff or just want to know stuff. Whereas 14-year-old young girls, in my experience, can be a bit surly and snarly and sneaky and a bit standoffish, whereas the fellas just ask me questions. So I was in a school, I had 50 14-year-olds. I have a poster that says we can talk about anything. And I wasn't there specifically to talk about pornography, but I've put this poster up behind me. I've turned around and a boy's got his hand up. And I said, mate, normally I give you some information and then I ask questions. That's how class goes. And he said, no, miss, I've got a question now. And I've said, okay, go on then, ask your question. And excuse my language, but he's gone, miss, why do so many women like anal sex? And I've just stood there. I didn't blink. I didn't go, I stayed deadpan and I said, I'm going to answer that for you. But before I do, how many of you young men have had sex? And they're all looking around the room at each other. Oh, none of us, miss, we haven't even kissed a girl yet. So I said, so how do you know about that? Oh, because of all the porn, hey, and they're all nudging each other, all the porn we're watching. And they said that they watch at least 2 hours a week of pornography. So the poster says we can talk about anything. So I had to go there with these young men. And I said to them, okay, so, and you want to know about anal sex? So I was saying, now what is your bottom? It's a muscle. And I've got my hand up and I'm saying, and it's not made for things to go back the other way. A vagina gets wet because of kissing and that sort of stuff. And so I had to go there. And so I'm going to be very frank with you. And I wasn't going to, but I think you're here to learn. So I'm going to show you the language that I used with the young men. I explained to them that in these movies that they're watching, that, you know, there is no kissing, there is no foreplay, there is no pleasure for women, there is no consent. And so we talked about that, you know, with, you know, in a normal, beautiful, loving relationship, and it was a Catholic school, so again I had to say married, so depends, you know, this has been seen around the world, so you'll use that language for your audience. But I said, you know, a vagina gets wet because of kissing and foreplay and things like that, but a bottom doesn't get wet, so you need to use lubrication. It's not made for things to go up. And I was very blunt and I said, you know, those people in those movies are actors, and, you know, they, because it's their job, they exercise that muscle, so they might use something to make it larger, and it doesn't go from one orifice into another orifice without washing it, but you don't see that in the movie. So I was very, very frank with these young men. I've got 3 male teachers in the classroom. 2 of them wanted to hide under the desk. One of them was fantastic and was really interactive, and he helped out a great deal. But these young men, and again, this is going to be very blunt, but these young men were describing Coke cans in vaginas, women having sex with animals, women having sex with machines, and they were just very, you know, blasé about it. And they were saying, oh, but miss, it's just so funny. And so I've gone, okay, fellas, how much do you think a porn star gets paid? Oh, $1 million, miss, $500,000, miss. I said, would it interest you to know that the porn industry is the only industry that I know of in the world where women are actually paid more than men? They get $1,000. And the boys are going, what? to do that? I said, yeah. I said, what do you think they do with that $1,000 per movie? And one young man puts his hand up and goes, oh, miss, I think they buy costumes. I said, buddy, I don't know what you're watching, but the stuff that I know about, there ain't too many costumes. I said, no, it either, goes in their arm or up their nose. Much of the money goes on drugs or alcohol, because they need to do that to do the next movie. And I'm just trying to make these young men realise that that's somebody's sister, that's somebody's daughter. They are so desensitized to what they're saying. When they said it was funny, after describing all this horrible stuff, it really brought it home to me that in 10 years' time, these 14-year-olds are going to be our future teachers, police, doctors, nurses, parents, and they just don't see those women in the movies as humans. And so this drives me to work with these amazing people that you're going to see today, to keep educating about this. It is changing children's lives. I have girls telling me, the high school girls say, oh, miss, I'm never having sex. It's so filthy, it's so disgusting. Because the boys are taking their phones to school and showing each other. I mean, recently I've been aware that a lot of kids are taking their either iPads or phones and showing each other the movie 365 Days. Now, when I was made aware of this movie, bless her, I was watching an interview with Gail Dines, who's an absolute legend in this field. And she mentioned 365 Days. So I've gone onto Netflix and had a look at it. The day I looked at it and watched the movie myself, because if I'm going to talk to kids, unfortunately, I have to watch this stuff. So it was MA+. And I should have grabbed my phone and taken a picture of that, but I didn't. Now, fortunately, it is R-rated, but still kids are watching these sorts of things. So it's really important that, you have protection on Netflix and whatever technology that you have. And again, throughout the day, I'm sure experts will tell you about that sort of stuff. Bless Wahil, I'm not an expert in the field. I'm just very passionate because of my experience with children and what they're telling me. So back to consent. I really, no matter whereabouts in the world you're watching this, I really hope that we can get adults to understand that we need to teach consent from this big. I would never take a baby from a parent without saying, can I have a cuddle? I put out my hands. If the baby puts out their hands, I'd take them. If the baby went like this, I wouldn't take them. So when people hear the word consent, they go straight to sex. Consent is about body autonomy. It's not, just a thing about sex. And so it's really important that people help families understand this as well, because I'm getting lots of messages from mums saying, Holly, I've been watching all your stuff talking about consent and we're teaching it with our kids, but their grandparents or their extended family won't listen, and they just grab my kid and kiss them and things like that. And I was doing a talk last week to a group who it was a group that helped people in the community, and I had 30 people in the group, only 3 women, but just about everybody in the group was a grandparent. And when I'm saying to the grandparents, the greatest gift you'll give your grandchild is teaching them about consent. This man took issue with me and, I'm not a pedophile. I should just be allowed to, kiss my grandchildren when I want to, or put them on my knee or tickle them if I want. And I basically had to talk him off the roof, because he was really, really defending himself, saying, what are you saying? I'm a pedophile. No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, if you as a grandparent model consent to your grandchildren, what a gift. If kids know that their parents will ask to wipe their bottom, ask to brush their hair, ask them, to do anything. When I'm working with kids and I want to give them a high five, I don't just put up my hand. I say, can I give you a high five? If you don't want to, that's fine. We need to empower children to know about consent. Because back to the story of the mum that contacted me about her daughter being contacted by the 14-year-old boy, who probably wasn't even 14. The mum said, I mean, the fact that she was even on there at 11 or 12, she might have been. Anyway, she was under 13. But she said, I can't stop talking to him because I don't want to upset him. And that's the whole thing. We need to, get our children to understand that they own their bodies and that nobody should be doing anything to their bodies without their consent. So, if a child goes to, the doctor should ask to touch their body if they've got a boil on it, or to look in their mouth. If we're modelling this for children, if they understand this, then that's one thing that's going to combat, the impact that porn is having on our children. Because I've written a parent handbook, and I was dropping it off to our hospital that take children that have been abused, and they interview them and take forensics and stuff like that. And the last time I dropped off the books, one of the head psychs was saying that they're seeing 2 girls a week, 14-year-old girls a week, that have gone to a party. A boy has, they thought that they were consenting to sex, vaginal sex, but he's not gone there. He's gone up another hole, and these girls are being damaged, and they just don't understand. And when kids are telling me that they're, I say, why would you look at that? Oh, to learn technique, miss, to learn style. That's not the right technique, and there's no style. But also, they're looking at that stuff because, in my experience, here in Australia, where we are very liberal, I feel, we are still rubbish at teaching sex education. In my experience, schools, are doing STIs and unwanted pregnancies. So you're all going to get syphilis and have a baby you don't want. But we're not doing the respect for relationships, how to ask somebody out. And, the porn industry is laughing because, teenagers are taking that as their sex education. And so, we need to be telling them about pleasure for women, because in so many of the movies, there is no, women are being dominated. I also know of an organisation that there was a foster mother told me this story. Her 16-year-old foster child with an intellectual disability was questioning his sexuality. And so she took him to this organisation, and their recommendations to him was, well, if you watch gay porn, that's how you would. And I lost it. I could not believe that they would give that. He's under, so here in Australia, you need to be over 18 to see pornography. So he's only 16. But, from what I've heard and talked to experts about, gay pornography is, there's a very dominant person and a tiny little person being pounded, being so graphic. That is not education. And for this organisation to be recommending that to young people just blew my mind. We have to do good, really good, thorough, respectful relationship stuff. So I just want to show you how I teach 6-year-olds about this in class. So I'd pull out this book that I wrote, and I say to the children, we're going to pretend this is an iPad, and I'm going to type in fairies, but a picture of a lady with no clothes on, but big fairy wings comes up. What should I do? And the kids go, one kid put up his hand and go, well, miss, I'd type in fairies with clothes on. Like, you silly woman, what else? Made me laugh. But it's not that easy. You can't just type in fairies with clothes on. So what I teach the children to do is, if it's an iPad, I need them to flip it over, and I need them, remember, to go and show an adult what they saw. If it's an iPhone, flip it over. If it's a laptop, close the lid. If it's a computer, just shut, just turn off the screen so you don't see it again. But you must show an adult what you saw, because kids are describing flashbacks and nightmares to me that they're having. I was talking to somebody recently who was counselling an 8-year-old child who couldn't sleep, and you know, she couldn't sleep because every time she closed her eyes, those pictures would come into her mind. So we need to give kids the language. So I explained to them that your brain is amazing, and in your brain you've got all these connections, millions and millions of connections. But if you see pictures or movies of people with no clothes on, it changes the connections in your brain. It rewires your brain. And even if you see stuff that makes you feel yuck, you go back and look at it because it tricks your brain, because it releases a chemical in your brain called dopamine. Now, if I'm running around, my brain creates a little bit of dopamine to say, hey, Holly, keep running around. Or if I'm eating chocolate, a little bit of dopamine to say, hey, Holly, keep eating chocolate. But if I see pictures or movies of people with no clothes on, it's like a flood of this dopamine in my brain. And our brain loves it. So even if it makes you feel yuck, you'll still look at it. So I teach them to either flip it over or turn it off, turn the screen off, not shut it down, turn away and say, that's private out loud, and then report it. And that's like turning off the dopamine tap. And I say to them, if that picture pops into your mind, I want you to close your eyes and picture something that you like to see or you like to do. Because, you know, just to try and give them some sort of skills around this. So in this book that I wrote, the teacher's teaching the kids about safe and unsafe pictures. And what happens is she teaches them, just like I've told you, this young man's watching Minecraft videos on YouTube, which I actually, the reason I wrote that, and we're going to run out of time, so I'm not going to get to show you the video, but it's on my Safe4Kids YouTube channel anyway, if you want to go and have a look at it. I typed in Minecraft into YouTube, and down the side they had all the thumbnails with the Minecraft characters in different sexual positions. And so I wrote it into the story. And so that night, this little fellow has these nightmares. So in the morning, he goes to his mum and he tells his mum exactly what he saw. And she said, mate, you're not in trouble. Have you got any questions? And he says, Mum, is that what sex is? Now, if I'm using this in schools, I say, Mum, is that what grown-ups do? Because my greatest fear is if kids see pornography, are they thinking that their parents are doing that sort of stuff? Because, you know, like I said before, 88% of porn is violence against women. And for young people to think that their dad is doing that to their mum, that keeps me awake at night, to be honest. But this mum in the book says, no, that's not how grown-ups treat each other. Those people are actors, very bad actors. They're acting like they like that. But that's not how, you know, in our home, you know, mummy and daddy care for each other. And so it's just to give adults language around this. And then they have this beautiful conversation. It's a lot of text. And you'll work out, if you choose to look at it for your children, how much of it you actually read, or if you can just paraphrase it. But then he goes back to school and says to the teacher, you were right. My mum didn't tell me off. She didn't take my iPhone or iPad away, and everybody lives happily ever after. A couple of other resources that I've written very quickly. I wrote this one. It's called Someone Should Have Told Me, and it's talking about pornography and other cyber issues. Because I'm not aware of any real resource to talk about grooming with children, which is also another problem on the internet. So this picture here, I wish somebody had told me not to let people take private pictures of me. And in the back of the book, there's paragraphs for each page, but it says that, you know, this guy would have said, oh, you look so cute in your Superman outfit, let me take a picture. I know, why don't you bounce on the bed? No, I'm not allowed to bounce on the bed. No, go on, bounce on the bed. Then they get the kids caught in that unsafe secret. I know, it'd be really funny. How about we take a naked shot? And one other picture I just want to show you is this picture here. Because according to the federal police, children as young as 4 are taking naked pictures of themselves on their iPads. So we need to have these conversations with children. We also need to talk about child-to-child sexual abuse, which is up. I read something recently, and I don't know where it was a blog, so and they didn't quote where they got this stat from, but it said that child-to-child sexual abuse is up 400%, and so when I'm doing teaching, I say that 1/3 of children will suffer some form of sexual abuse, and that's the whole spectrum. There's a lot of statistics that say 1 in 3 girls, 1 in 6 boys, but that's the most heinous act. If a child is seeing pornography, that is child sexual abuse. If children have been flashed by somebody at a bus stop, that is child sexual abuse. But those aren't in the statistics. So and I can give, if people want it, where I quote 1/3 of children. But about 45% of child sexual abuse is either children to children or teenager on children. And so I had to write a book around that because I had a principal contact me looking for a resource. In the 2 months prior to him ringing me, he had had 6 separate cases in his school of children abusing other children, all isolated, all different ages. But when the Department for Child Protection investigated each case, it came back to the kids having seen pornography. So I wrote this book, and it's about a little boy who, so I've got 5 books in total, and they sort of go in a series, but this is the final one in the series. So the kids have learnt about having a safety team and all the other beautiful protective education stuff that we teach them. But a new child comes to the school, and what happens is something private happens in the toilet. Now, I don't say what the private thing that happened in the toilet was, but what I do is the teacher sits the class down and teaches that there are 5 private rules. No one's allowed to touch your private parts without your consent. If they did, it wouldn't be your fault. So if a doctor or if your parent has to touch it for hygiene or for medical reasons, you are not allowed to touch anybody else's private parts. If you do, you are breaking the law. No one's allowed to show you private pictures. No one's allowed to take private pictures of you, and you're not allowed to take private pictures of yourself. So we need to give kids language around this stuff, because I was at a conference in Qatar back in February, and I was blessed to be able to speak there. But on the very first day, the very first keynote, the very first slide he put up said 1 billion children are abused every year, and I just burst into tears. So that's why I'm really proud to have been part of this, and to be the opening act. I hope it was useful, the opening act for today. Wahil, I don't know if you're there. I don't know if there are any questions. Where are my glasses? Let me have a look if there are any questions in the chat.
All right, Holly, let me read for you so you don't get busy with reading. Beautiful. So we got a few questions. Thank you so much. That was an eye-opening for everyone, I believe. And I forgot to make some warning in the beginning, you know, that sometimes the content would appear to some people as very heavy to take. So if you think you wish to take a walk in between those nightmares and see some flowers outside and then come back to more nightmares, you're most welcome to do that. But this is a problem. This is a problem that we're facing. It's a reality. It's happening. And as you can see, I was actually disturbed by seeing those images drawn by little kids, just to show you that they know more than what you think. And so as a result of that, we should reach them out before they reach to the inappropriate pages and inappropriate people who could lead them to disastrous fate. So thank you so much, Holly. That was really insightful. Now we have a couple of comments and questions for you. Someone mentioned that curious why the word bottom is used if we need to use correct terminologies. Isn't it more accurate to use buttock, anus, rectum? Bottom isn't an actual body part. So any thoughts around that?
Totally. No, and in an ideal world, Wahil, I would use those words, but I can't even get teachers when I'm training them to say penis, vulva, and vagina. So to get them to say anus, I think would just put them over the edge. The problem is kids use words, and especially for the front parts, like, you know, flower and Minnie and Mickey and Tweety and things like that. So, you know, if people are comfortable But my other worry is that if when a child is disclosing, because, you know, I've had so many parents tell, you know, mums especially tell me how there was an allegation made and the lawyers are saying the children were coached. And I worry that if a child said anus, then they'll say, oh, somebody's put words in that kid's mouth. On the other hand, you could say, yes, because we've been teaching abuse prevention education, so there's always a counteract. But ideally, yes, it would be, you know, in an ideal world, we definitely would use those words. But if, you know, if I can't get them teachers, especially because that's where I train, yeah. So I don't know if I've answered the question, but ideally, if you're comfortable teaching those words, power to you.
I see. So sometimes it depends on the level of also the children that you're dealing with, and how far they know these terminologies, as to reach them in the right way. So beautiful. Okay. There is also a question regarding what children are usually accessing. So is it because children mirror what they see, or more they are acting out what is happening to them?
In all the cases that I've been involved with, because when schools contact me, the first question I say is, what was the critical incident that got you to come into the school? It's usually children having seen porn. There is, with child-to-child sexual abuse, there is only 3 ways that kids would know about those behaviours. Have it seen it happen, had it happen, or seeing pornography. And in my experience, it's usually the third one, having seen pornography. And we are talking about, and again, I'm going to be very graphic here. We have kids in our state that know about RedTube, and this is very graphic, but they know about ZooTube. And just before we all went into lockdown here in Western Australia, I did a training in a school and I told the teachers about ZooTube. And children are learning about this from an adult cartoon that they should not be watching. But the characters go and blah, blah, blah. And then on ZooTube, kids go ZooTube, Google it. 9 boxes are going to open up with people having sex with animals. There is no, are you 18? This is adult content. There is no warning. The videos are automatically running. Now, I was in a school just before, back in February, and a teacher said, Holly, I heard the grade 4s talking about that in the playground while I was on duty, and I just continued my duty because I didn't understand. I didn't know what it was. So, you know, these are, and just last week, the Australian Centre for Counter Child Exploitation put out a report to say 1 in 5 children are on the internet unsupervised. Now, every kid's got a mobile phone just about. So, you know, that's their statistics, but I think it might even be higher. But those kids that have been in lockdown are now going to go back to school and have had, you know, they're going to be telling their whole class what they're seeing. You know, think back to when here in the Western society, you know, kids believe in Santa Claus, and there's always going to be that one kid in the class that goes and tells the whole class there's no such thing as Santa Claus. There's going to be that child that's been at home with free access who's going to go to class whenever, you know, whatever country you're in, the kids go back to school and either want to tell the other kids about it, or I've had lots of reports of kids taking mobile phones. I had a police officer tell me after I trained her group how her daughter was in grade 1 and a boy on the Friday had told the whole class about how he saw this picture of a lady licking a girl's fanny, I think he said. And then on the Monday, he brought mum's iPhone to school to show the whole class that video. And, you know, it's just not being dealt with in schools because the principal, she went to report it to the principal and he said, oh, well, we can't control what children bring to school. What? That's, and never addressed it with the children. So we're failing children because we're not educating parents, we're not educating schools about how to deal with this. So I'm hoping that people will, you know, after hearing all the amazing speakers that we've got today, go back to their children's schools and saying, you know, here in Western Australia, it's mandated that every school will teach protective behaviours. Um, and some schools are doing the bare minimum, but I basically say, unless you are talking about child-to-child sex abuse and pornography, you're wasting your time. We need to get real with children, because the internet is taking away their innocence. And people say, you know, oh, you know, talking to 6-year-olds, you're taking away their innocence. No, if they see YouTube, that's going to take away their innocence.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning this. As long as we don't we teach child-on-child sexual abuse and pornography, we are wasting our time. And I agree with you 100%, because I received a phone call some times ago, not so long ago, after my trip to Nigeria, from a principal, school principal, who mentioned that she actually discovered or found 2 children in primary school. I visited that school myself. It's primary school. Primary school, like we have children from 6, 7 years up until maximum perhaps 10 years in primary school, isn't it? Am I right, Holly?
So
Approximate.
primary schools, 6 to 12, primary school.
Yeah, 6 to 12. Because my son Ibrahim is already in year 7, and he's 11 years old. So he just left primary last year. So anyway, that range, those children. So she found 2 children acting out sexual positions in the bathroom, in the toilets. And even the sexual position she described to me, it was something that I could never even fathom, could never even imagine that children would see something like that and act it in the school, like, you know, nowhere else they could have done that, but in the school, which shows that kids will imitate what they're watching if we're not supervising them. Secondly, they could turn into addicts to these imagery and these positions. So we hope that we will keep on educating them, as Holly mentioned. Yes, Holly, you want to say something?
Yeah, I have boys, and it's not only boys that watch porn. I want to be totally transparent about that. But I have boys 11 years of age who come up after my lessons and say, Miss, I feel like I'm addicted to porn. I don't put those words in their mouth, and I never talk about addiction, you know, with kids in primary school. But they say to me, I just have to look at it and stuff like that. So of course, you know, we get them onto counselling and stuff like that. But you know, these are 11-year-olds, and you know, it's just destroying. And you know, that young man you spoke about that came to you who was going to take his own life, this
Yes.
is destroying children's lives.
And this is not the first time, by the way. Like, this is the man who got me started, the whole research, the whole reading, the whole reaching out to people and speaking about porn. That's the man who got me started. But in those 12, 13 years of experience, I have received a lot of emails from young men and women who actually expressed their intention to commit suicide because of their addiction to pornography, or because of any other things related to pornography, like whether it is affecting their relationships with their spouses, or their productivity, or their careers. That's why my last book, Aware, I'm mentioning 12 areas where pornography could actually damage everything beautiful that you have established. All right, Holly, we have about 10 minutes question and answer. Also, I want to direct people to your website. I already typed the website of safe4kids.com.au, safe4kids.com.au, where you can actually reach out to Holly, email her, or purchase her books. And also, I'll give her a minute or two at the end to explain about her programs, online parenting educational programs that she have designed. But for now, there are a couple of questions. I want to sum them up quickly. So one question regarding children who don't pay attention to your warnings or advice, and you cannot convince them when you talk to them about certain things related to either gaming or pornography, or how can we convince children to at least sit and listen?
And that's why it takes a whole community, because especially if it's a parent, kids go, yeah, whatever. And that's why those of you who are parents, you'll know when your child was little and they went to school, you might say, eat your carrots, and they don't. They go to school and they eat the carrots. So it would be about finding somebody that they connect with to have the same conversations. I know in my training, when I'm talking with mums, I say, if you've got a 14 or a 15-year-old son and you want him to know something, don't try and tell him, because he's not going to listen. You tell his mate's mum and have her tell him, and you have this reciprocal thing going. You tell her kid, she tells your kid. Or you wait till they're in the back seat of the car, because, you know, then they can't get away from you. But it's about trying to humanize, for me with teenagers, it's about trying to humanize what they're seeing and getting them to, and it's not just a one-off conversation. We need to, you know, that is somebody's daughter, that is somebody's sister, and, you know, doing more brain science. And that's why I'm so excited with, you know, Gary Wilson's stuff around the brain science, and everybody's talking about brain science now, because, you know, it's no good coming to them from a religious perspective, or you know, the science is the science, and, you know, it does affect the frontal lobe. Explaining that, you know, over extended time, it actually shrinks your frontal lobe and stuff like that. So it's not a moral thing, or a, you know, you're not trying to, it's just about giving them, and each child is different. So you'll find, you know, what works with one may not work with another. So I hope those tips are okay, but that's why it needs to be school, home, and the child all working together to keep kids safe. And, you know, they might have a favourite uncle that could talk to them, or whatever it is. So it's about employing other people, so that you're not just the same person that's harping on and on and on about it like a broken record. You know, we need, as a community, to have these sorts of ads. I believe that we need ads on the TV, to be honest. A couple of years ago, I was involved in running a symposium. I think you might have even come to it, well. Oh no, that might have been like before that. Anyway, we brought a gentleman over who works with pedophiles from Germany. And in Germany, they have ads on the television about perpetrators. And the ad is of a lady sitting on a train next to her probably 10-year-old son, and there's this man sort of leering at him. And it says, if you feel like this, contact this number. I think in Australia and around the world, we need to be brave enough to have ads about pornography, like the one from New Zealand. I cannot speak highly enough of that one from New Zealand. I've seen a couple of people come out and bag it. I don't know why, because if it starts a conversation, power to them. You know, we've got ads about drugs, and we've got ads now about domestic violence. I think that we need to step up for our kids, and we need an ad talking about private pictures and private movies.
Wow.
Another question?
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, I just wanted to ask on behalf, I think, of a couple of you private, send me private messages regarding if they found out that their children are actually addicted to pornography. And I think I don't want you to elaborate on this question, because so many speakers will touch on this later on, and the time is actually running out. And I really want you to introduce your work before we end. But how can we help those children who are really addicted or having some problem with viewing these content?
Well, like you said, I'm sure our colleagues will elaborate more, but they need to seek proper counselling, you know, whether they reach out, you know, to you or to other organisations that are dealing with this. One of the things that I'm worried about that we don't do well in Australia is we don't, and I did an interview with a woman, a friend of mine from the UK, who specialises in cyber trauma. And it's something that we don't talk enough about in Australia, whether it's pornography, whether it's violence, whether it's horror. Our children are being traumatized by what they see, and, you know, they are having flashbacks like I described before. So we must seek, you know, proper help for them.
Beautiful. And I wanted to, that's why we call this conference Dear Parents. And I wanted to advise everyone that this is not going to be a one-off event, even though the participants, the live participants, are not as we expected, because we have over 700 people have registered. And the reason perhaps because the time difference around those 52 countries may conflict with them coming live. Also perhaps because it's a long day, so maybe some people found it difficult to commit to 8 hours, coming. But anyway, the recording is there, and I'm sure many people will listen to this event later on. But one of the things I believe, and I will let Holly also elaborate on this before we end, is that parents should get on board when schools announce that there is an event where protective behavior is going to be presented. I myself working in school, and we keep on calling parents to attend such events, and only 2 or 3 parents who show up. Can you imagine 2 to 3 parents in a school where 1,000 students are coming and attending every day? So it's something like we feel that parents sometimes feel that school management, teachers, counselors are babysitting their children. It's not going to work this way. Unless we work as one team, really, things will go out of hand. Holly, you have 2 minutes or 3 minutes max to direct your people to your programs, and tell us a little bit about working in school and how important it is to get parents on board.
Thank you. So yes, definitely. When I'm working in schools, I won't go into a school or a community without it being a whole of community approach, because we cannot expect children to keep themselves safe. Like I said, it needs to be school, home, and the child all working together. It has to be a community. It is the old, it takes a village. That's, that is so important. So, but when I'm doing work in schools, I'll work with the kids all day. I'll run a parent workshop that night. And out of 900 children, so that's probably about 550 families, I'm lucky to get 15 parents. And I feel like shaking them and going, what is more important than keeping your child safe? So please, I implore you, if you need to get on board with this, you need to educate yourself. If your school isn't teaching abuse prevention education, then please check out my website. And if you are an educator, I'm actually at the moment in my Safe4Kids educators group running free training at 2 o'clock Perth time. I'm doing a Facebook Live for the next 10 weeks, giving free training on teaching abuse prevention education. Please, on my Safe4Kids YouTube channel, I've got, I don't know, 30 odd videos of talking about this sort of stuff as well. And if you find something useful, please share that. I've been blessed to have written 7 songs with Aboriginal kids in remote communities about consent and a safety team and all of this sort of stuff. So if you find that useful, please share this. I look at this as a stone in a pond, and it's the ripples that move out. And if each person today goes away and shares just something that they've learned, wow, that's pretty amazing. I have, most of the stuff I do is on Facebook, so it's just Safe4Kids. And I'm always sharing free research, the latest free resources, just lots of good information for both educators and for parents, because I believe by working together, we can stop child sex abuse. We can, we can't fight the porn industry, but, if people just go in and sign the what do you call it, thing to shut down Pornhub and things like that, we need to advocate for children. So I'm just so blessed to have been invited to talk today, and I hope people found it useful.